Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Justin the Food Entrepreneurs. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm your host. That's Bizzarro. For anyone who's out there and you want to find us, you can find us on Instagram at Justin Bizzarro or at Justin the Food Entrepreneurs. You can also find our community of food and beverage entrepreneurs at Gorilla Brave. That's GORILLABRAVE, not Gorilla Grave. I think I've probably mispronounced it on before, and people are like, Gorilla Grave, what does that mean? No, brave. But anyway, there's a lot of information on there for restaurateurs, food truck people, as I've accumulated 28 years plus of food service and beverage, hospitality knowledge, hotels, whatever that I've now been in, all sorts of things. And then the podcast and all the information everyone's come out with on the podcast, I've consolidated over the last 16 months as I took a leave of absence from the podcast, did some personal growth, rebuilt some businesses, started looking at things differently, got a little more strategic with moving forward. We waited to relaunch the podcast and start them again until we had collected basically 28 years worth of knowledge from my food experience as an entrepreneur, from all the way from contract to food trucks, to hospitals, to building, to construction, to commissaries, to food truck commissaries, whatever I had, plus mixed in with whatever we talk about on the podcast. I've cross-referenced all of it. So all the education from the podcast, all the education of my life, cross-referenced with all these amazing scholarly, access to all this scholarly information, we've consolidated onto Gorilla Brave, onto one platform, so I can deliver that to you guys. It was getting to the point where it was all in my head, and it was so overwhelming, I had to put it down somewhere. I think December 25th episode that was released, December 25th, 2024, we talk about a 40 days, 40 nights that turned into 6 months for me and my trip with God. Well, that's what came out. When I got quiet, God put all the pieces together in a way, and then allowed it to come out of me through his voice in a way. I don't know how else to describe it, because the amount of information that came out of me that was able to be useful and educational and help generations is kind of crazy. But that's because of the entrepreneurs on the show. That's because of mentors I had. That's because of years in business and people investing in us, and great employees, great clients, great customers, whatever it was. That's why it existed. Anyway, with that being said, I have Chef Johwan Askew with us. How are you doing today? Did I get that correct again?
You nailed it, my man. You nailed it.
Tell us about you. I mean, I know you have multiple decades of experience as well.
Yes,
I know that there's ups and downs in that. So let's start at the beginning when you were a little bitty chef. And let's
my favorite part.
Let's tell the story of your life and sort of how you got to where you are.
Okay, definitely. I'm from South Florida, and it's a small town, very small town, where football, sugarcane is everything in that community. So I grew up playing football player, and I was doing pretty well. And then I got in a bad car accident my senior year that I actually broke both legs and a finger. And so that ended the football career. So I healed pretty well, and I actually jumped inside. The restaurant's called the Clewiston Inn. It's a historic hotel in Clewiston. And that's where I first started cooking that. And during that journey, I spent a year doing that. And they actually shot a movie in the Clewiston area called Striptease. They had Demi Moore in there and Burt Reynolds, and it's way back in the days. I'm talking about like 93, 94.
I remember that. Yes, I was 13 years old. Just the title alone was appealing to a 13-year-old in all sorts of sinful ways. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So, and I just got in a restaurant. They have different stations, right? If you're cooking the French fries, you work the fry station. And if you're cooking steaks, burgers, chicken, you're on the grill. And if you're cooking pastas and different type of specialty items, you were on the saute section. And they started me on fry because I didn't know anything. So I was cooking, and I actually cooked the order of fried chicken. I mean, it's with the full chicken. This is how old the restaurant is. I'm talking about the wings, the thigh, the breast, and those parts of the chicken, right? So I cooked the chicken and I'm like, Greg worked next to me. And I was like, Greg, like, how do I know when the chicken is done? He says, when it floats. I'm like, okay. So, so I cooked the chicken so it starts floating. He says, it's floating. I'm like, yeah, it's done. So we put it out, we put it on the plate, and we sent it out to one of the I didn't know it was one of the producers of the movie. They just got into the city. And so she bit the chicken, and lo and behold, the chicken was raw in the center. And blood got all on her white shirt.
Oh God.
It was so embarrassing. It was so embarrassing. So the executive chef, he lived in another city, Fort Myers, which is kind of west of Clewiston. He called to the restaurant, like, get that young boy off of that station right there. So 2 weeks later, I'm on the saute section, and I started learning my way around. So now the film company is really in our area shooting this movie. And I started making the shrimp scampies and stuff like that. So all of a sudden, I did it for the party. And then I got asked, like, who made the shrimp scampi? And I ducked my head. I was like, oh, my God, here we go. And I was like, I made the shrimp scampi. And it's like, oh, it was good. So the very next night, somebody ordered the shrimp scampi again. I'm like, I got to remember how I did it. So I did it again. And this particular time, I got called to the table. And I go to the table, and one of the producers was like, this is delicious, young man. Like, this is the second time we had this here. And he asked me, what school did I go to? And I was like, no school. And it's like, you should go to culinary school. I was like, what? Nah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I know that one. Go on.
Yeah. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And then lo and behold, I wound up moving out of Clewiston. I go to Daytona Beach, and I went to work at another restaurant. And I met a gentleman that was opening up a restaurant. The restaurant was called Stonewood Tavern and Grill. And I go work for the company, and I hear a rumor that they was giving out scholarships to the culinary program in that city. So I started wondering. I was like, I asked the guy was named, his owner was Doug Sullivan. So I asked Doug, are you giving out scholarships? He's like, no, this is a restaurant. So I was really puzzled, and I kind of walked off. And then 3 days later, he asked me, do you want to go to the culinary program? I was like, yeah. Man, let me tell you, Justin, 2 days later, he wrote me a check for $10,172. I remember to the T, for me to go to that culinary program. And I jumped in it. And I rocked that culinary program. I literally brought him my grades, and me hitting the dean's list, the culinary competition. I brought it to him like he was my dad, to let him know that he did not waste his money on me. And I still thank him for that. I tell that story all the time. Like, it was God's blessing. Totally.
It is God's blessing. Things like that are just so weirdly. I won't tell Hugh, but I did have someone that I just did an interview on. Her food truck, like, literally everything went wrong on it, and she was going to go out of business. And out of nowhere, a random person gave her $5,000. Just gave it to her. Didn't want anything, doesn't come by the food truck to get free food or want attention for what she did, but the person just gave it to her. And so I think this is along the similar lines. I want to talk about this a little bit. I'm going to get back to it. Let's go back to, you break both legs, football's over. How do you football was something that you wanted to do for the rest of your life, potentially, like, you have your mindset. What was it like, the humility that took place to put yourself in a kitchen in the first place to even fry the chicken?
The humility goes deeper than that. It goes so much deeper. I had a younger brother that was in the car with me in the accident. The car rolled down the hill, and he actually broke his neck. So he had to live with a halo on his head, on his neck, for 2 years. So that kind of kept me in the city, because he was younger than I was. So I'm saying it now, but I had that guilt of, he couldn't move forward. So we couldn't move forward because he was healing and I was healing. So I had to eventually get a job. And I actually started at Little Caesars first. And because it was in the town, it was easy. I was trying to take community classes at a local college, or kind of a couple cities away. And I just started to get really good at the Little Caesars when that opportunity opened up for a little bit more money. And that's why I took the leap to go to a full service kitchen from that part. So I had to deal with a lot of, regrets because I didn't want my brother to go with me on that car trip, but he begged and I brought him and we got in this car accident. So I had to deal with that for like 2, 3 years.
Man, I'm sorry about that, and I'm sorry about your brother for sure. I just want to put that out there. The part that I think is the interesting part. Well, one, working at Little Caesars is not easy. Working at pizza places are not easy jobs. Okay. I've spent some time in them recently when I was going through like a humbling myself about 2.5 years ago. And I did donuts too and deli work and a lot of things because I just couldn't function mentally with losing my relationships, my family unit, and then being in business for 24 years and no longer having those businesses. My identity just cracked. I didn't know what doing. In a lot of ways, I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't have mentors that were helping me with the ability to handle it. Therapy didn't help me. It was this weird thing that I kind of spun out of control and no one could help me. And it was a 2 to 3 year period about that I've sort of went through the dark night I was talking about earlier and then sort of came out of it. But the damage it did to my relationships for sure, not good. Even though I was trying to heal and become a better person, there's just so much hurt and pain and suffering and guilt and shame when you are responsible for, or you feel responsible, I shouldn't say are, we feel responsible for the harm of others, whether it's in business, whether it's in our personal relationships, whether it's accidents or whatever, or decisions we've made. That doesn't go away. And it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
And the thing about being stuck is so true. If anyone looks at the podcast, I went really hard in 2023. I was doing really well. I went through what I would call maybe a reconciliation period in my relationship that ended abruptly, that I didn't handle well when the reconciliation ended abruptly. I was confused. I was hurt. I felt betrayed. I felt actions didn't match words. There was just so many things. And, I would later find out you can't reconcile if the other person's already moved on in a new relationship. Yeah. So what a waste of time that was. And that destroyed me. And the worst part about it is when someone isn't honest with you about that to your face when you ask, like, can I just know if there's someone else because I need closure? But they still won't give it to you. And all that time, you spend months and years thinking that it's your fault, that you did something wrong, that you tell everyone it's your fault. You take responsibility like a God person, and you should.
Yeah.
But eventually time goes on and maybe a little more evidence comes out, or they were hiding something or someone.
Yes.
And it changes the perspective a little bit. But in that period that we're stuck, we grow. We still grow. Weirdly, if we choose to, there's being stuck and diminishing, but there's also being stuck and still going from a Little Caesars to restaurant. And I'm saying this to the crowd because I've been through it. It is crawling all over again. It is dragging yourself on the ground all over again. I don't know how else to describe it, but literally there were days I'd be working nights. I'd help with my grandmother during the day, or I'd do the podcast during the day, and then I need insurance into work because that wasn't covered in part of my deal. So I'd work at a grocery store doing donuts and deli meats and anything I could, because here was the thing, guys. Like, I was so mentally effed up. I don't want to curse. I'm trying to do a better job of that. Everyone knows my early podcast, a lot of cursing, trying to do better, be a godly person, but I couldn't function normally. And then here's the worst part about it. Everyone's reminding me that I'm not functioning perfectly and I'm a high functioning person. And what's wrong with me? Why am I not doing things? And I have a big brain and blah, blah, blah. And I don't, when your emotions in life hit you that hard and you're responsible or feel responsible for something that you didn't intend to do, but it happened, and it, at the end of the day, you can't separate yourself from the responsibility. It's hard. You have to live with yourself. And the problem is what happens is you fall at, a person goes from loving life, loving humanity, loving everyone, to maybe still loving humanity, but not loving themselves. And when you don't love yourself, it's almost impossible to truly love humanity. And that's hard. That's the
Yeah.
part that I don't, as an entrepreneur or as people, when we have great failures or great losses and we're so valuable to our family units,
Yeah.
it's a breaking point. And you make bad decisions. I'm sorry. We do. It's fight or flight. Human genetics kicks in, human history kicks in, conditioned over tens of thousands of years, and we make bad decisions, really, really bad ones, and our egos and our pride take control, not logic and confidence and things like that. So I just want to anchor that from my own point of view, just because I think it's important. If you don't want to go through it for a 2 to 3 year period, you do have to sit in it. You do have to find fellowship. It took me too long to sort of get out of myself and into somewhere else. And it took me too long to get out of myself and give to others on a seriously huge level. Like, it's the only way. I've said it, like, if you're in yourself, give. But for me, I was so in the depths, so in the dark night of the soul, that the giving has to exponentially be matching to the darkness. And that's hard for everyone to understand. It goes beyond opening a door. It goes beyond doing a random act of kindness. It takes a lot of giving and a lot of volunteering and a lot of time spent that you don't want to.
Yeah.
But you have to.
Definitely.
So let's continue on. I mean, if you want to add anything to what I just said, please do that. But also on to the next question. Let's talk about this sort of trajectory after the movie and the producer and what happens after the shrimp scampi.
Was right after that, like I said, I moved to Daytona and I jumped into culinary school. And while I was working in culinary school, I was running a restaurant, Stonewood Tavern and Grill. And I worked with a senior guy, his name Chef Mike Jury. He kind of put me up under his wings, and I actually opened up 13 of their 14 locations as the chef. And he really believed in me. He used to call me Hammer. And the hustle and bustle of the restaurant business, I really fell in love with it. One, because I could do it, but the stress level, it was similar to the game of football to me. That intensity, we got to get it done. That rush, that adrenaline rush, I found that in the restaurant business. And that's kind of how I kind of picked up the passion and I look at the challenges of the day-to-day operations. That part of my life was being fulfilled by doing it. The biggest challenge is I see the Instagram chefs and they're doing these great plays and they're doing 1 plate, 2 plate. But to do 700 plates a night that way is the challenge for me. And that's what I love, the high volume. Let's get it. Let's do it right. And I absolutely love it like that.
Talk to me about the progression of your skill. What does the culinary school add to your armory, to your toolbox, to your personality? Also, what does it do to you, confidence, everything? Talk to me about the culinary school years and the importance of them.
I think that what it did for me is, and I did a lot of different things, and my research is radical, right? So I would look at my books, and I would watch Emerald at that time, because he was on the Food Network all over the place. So the creativity part, I was kind of pulling from that. And Wolfgang Puck was on, and I was kind of pulling from that. And I was reading a whole lot. And what happened, it helped me to look at a dish, and I can look at this, and I can see the building blocks of that dish. I can see like from start to finish. Like, I can look at a soup and I can tell you it's a mirepoix at the beginning. And I can taste it and I know it's a chicken stock because we learn how to build sauces and we learn how to create meals.
Yes. So talk to me a little bit about that. There's all this combinations of things that you're learning, sauces being foundations, meats, starches, desserts, baking, possibly. I don't know all the avenues that you possibly can learn in culinary school fully. I know the basics.
Those are the avenues.
And so how do you choose? How do you choose what avenue? How do you sort of continue this passion? And let's go back to where we sort of left off before I interrupted you.
Okay. So what I picked up, the areas I kind of jumped into is what I was already doing. So I was already doing like garde manger. I was already doing, that's when you're doing like cold foods and different things like that. And I was already doing the grill. So I kind of focused on those areas because I was already doing it. It was like a cheat code to me because my particular class had guys that's never seen a grill. They've never held a knife. So I've come in there with the Little Caesars background. I came in with the close to Nan background. So I was already kind of comfortable on the line. So the leadership role was kind of given to me in my particular class. So I was always the chef constantly be like, okay, Johwan, fire up the grill. So everybody's watching me fire up the grill. And then I pick out the steaks and they wonder how I'm choosing the steaks based on the temperature. And I started showing them and I started winning awards like being on Dean's List and most exceptional student because I kind of doubled down on what I already knew and the things that you're going to laugh about this one. And the things I necessarily didn't do well, I look for extra credits in those areas. Like one of my kryptonites is I don't eat mayonnaise products at all. Zero. No tuna fish, no apple salad, no carrot salad, no ranch dressing, no blue cheese dressing, none of it. No creamy sauce, none of it. I don't do any of it at all.
How do you get around it? Because it's obviously on menus or restaurants.
And that's my secret sauce.
Yeah.
So what I did is I learned the ingredients. So when making the ranch dressing, it's the onion powder, it's the garlic, it's the parsley. It depends on the concept. It may be dill and maybe without dill, right? And it's the buttermilk. So what I did is I would put the seasonings together and I would taste the seasonings. And if the seasonings was up to par, I knew I can just add in the rest of the stuff and it may not be Hidden Valley, but it's ranch dressing. And what I did is I found the extra credits in the classroom based on those subjects. And I went in and did those things. And I figured if I just made a high C or a B, I can still get through the class without actually messing with the mayonnaise products. And it worked.
It's interesting. I despise ketchup, so I understand your thing. Like, I can't stand it. It's way too sweet for me all the way around. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of marinara sauce and Italian, but I can't take it. If it's mixed in with other sauces on a burger, and because I love cheeseburgers and burgers so much, I can get by. Or if it's mixed in with mayo, because I like mayo, I'm the opposite. I really love mayo. I can get by on it. But it really, as like barbecue sauce, anything that's ketchup based, which is a lot of things surprisingly, or has ketchup on them, or meatloaf that people use ketchup, like it's a total thing for me as I was going through culinary stuff and being able to try stuff or menu stuff or people do stuff. If it has ketchup on it, it tastes so sweet to me, it's toxic. I don't know why. It's just the tomato, the acidity mixed with the sugar in me and the amount of sugar that we put into ketchup, it's too much for me. And so I can totally understand this and having to get around it, trust other people, also just trust the recipes and the chefs in my case that they were doing things properly with the ketchup because I can't tell.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the same. That's the same. I have a few other things like peas to me, like unless they're in a pea soup, I can't, they have a weird sour taste to me and I don't know why, but they do. So there's certain things like that as well that I think and when we're in the food business, there are obstacles. And in healthcare, peas were everywhere on the menu. It's in shepherd's pie. Definitely. It's in mashed potatoes. It's in whatever. Everyone's mixing peas in everywhere. And so it becomes like this thing where you just have to trust, I think, or figure out ways around it or know that it obviously mixes well with these other foods chemistry-wise because that's what the chefs are doing. So it must make sense here.
Yeah. That's exactly what, and I had a roommate that eat ranch dressing 24/7, blue cheese. And I just like, bet I'm gonna team up with you and we're gonna rock this thing.
Yeah, I love it.
And it worked. I got to be in the class and I literally went through the culinary school. My chef told me, you're not gonna pass this class if you don't eat mayonnaise. And I got like a B. He's like, I don't know how you did it, but you got it.
I'm going to talk about this also. It's so crazy. One of the things I want to talk about with entrepreneurs and trends, and it's important because we all will face something like this, and how we handle it matters. The
Mm-hmm.
major difference, one, in sparking an entrepreneur, but sparking the long-term entrepreneur that makes it over the long term through all the knocks, has a lot to do with the triggering of what failure looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And it also has to do with, can I get around an obstacle or a shortcoming by not necessarily having to go over that shortcoming the same way the traditional human is. If I could do it the same way as the traditional human can, I wouldn't have an obstacle.
Yes.
Dyslexia, certain things like that, those are learning disabilities. Let's start there. Okay. They make it hard to learn, harder to learn. But yet
Yeah.
individuals who figure out ways around it,
Yep.
read the person, do things differently. Maybe it's not necessarily as reading based as it is listening based human. They have to listen more.
Mhm.
Those skills become things we maneuver around that become our advantages. And there's a reason I bring dyslexia, because as we've discovered dyslexia, we've also discovered that a lot of high functioning, extremely successful humans have suffered from
Yes.
it. And the reason that they're successful humans is because by nature, because of their dyslexia, they've had to find reasons around it to survive. And because
Yeah.
those reasons are so large, it's often give them the skill to go around other obstacles in life that normally humans just hit head on traditionally through traditional education, environment, exposure, whatever.
Definitely.
So this is what we need as entrepreneurs on this show. What I just anchored there is that, and what we just talked about here with culinary school, is there is always an advantage for taking a more difficult path.
Yep. It is. And you know what? It's funny. And I use that as a day-to-day operation, especially when I teach and I coach and I train young chefs. I try to make them identify, like, what is their superpower? And it sounds crazy because I'm using the word superpower, right? And I look at the Avengers, right? Just walk with me for a second. The Avengers, right? You have the Incredible Hulk. You have Captain America. You have Black Hawk. You have Iron Man. You have Thor. They work together as a unit, but there's nobody's jealous of each other's superpower. Like, Thor doesn't want to be Incredible Hulk. Incredible Hulk doesn't want to be Thor. Iron Man doesn't want to be Thor. Like, they're all in their particular lane. So what I do, I get cooks to figure out, what is your lane? Like, what are you good at? Like, to develop your skill, you have to put blinders on, and you got to get focused, and you got to get locked in, because your road to success is going to look different than mine, and mine's going to look different than yours. But we got to look at it, and we're all going to reach the same goal. But you got to be comfortable being Thor. Incredible Hulk has to be incredible. He has to be, you know what I'm saying? He has to be comfortable being himself. And you got to lock into that. And that's why I think those individuals with the dyslexia, they just lock into who they are. And this is how I learn. And I'm not trying to learn the way you learn, because I need to learn the way I learn, so I can get the best version of myself, so I can operate in my superpower. That makes sense?
Yeah, I agree with this 100%. And I'll take it to a step further. And I love the superhero analogy and the superpowers, because I agree with those in the way that that's structured. I didn't think about each other not going in each other's lane before, but it is true. And it does solidify it in a way that I agree. And from an entrepreneurial standpoint, one of the things that I had to learn is I can't force a person into a position.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't teach work ethic and belief in culture off the bat. Someone has to have a natural, I should say, individual ability to grow, or growth mindset, in order to even go there. But that's a different topic. My point being this: you bring individuals into your organization, they have strong skills. If they truly believe in the culture, the mission, the vision, and the direction of the company, but they're not in the right position, they have a superpower that needs to go in a different position.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I want to emphasize. I got kind of circled there, but the difference being if the person doesn't believe in the culture, the whatever, and their superpower isn't fitting, it's going to be harder to move them around. And most likely, even if they're in a different position, the thing that's their kryptonite is their lack of belief that there is a superpower or a position they belong into. So that's just a note. And sometimes you do have to let people go. That's just life. But I want to emphasize the movement of the individual. I also want to emphasize that as the leader or the individual that's in charge or the entrepreneur, what you end up having to do, which I learned from playing soccer, is you have to fill the position that is most in need where your team is lacking the most. Okay.
You're speaking the truth.
And if it's an individual in there, that's the individual you have to mentor and coach first if they believe in the culture. And if there's not someone in there, humble yourself, whatever level it is, even if it's cleaning a bathroom, you're going to have to do it.
Exactly.
So let's talk about mindset, work ethic. You're coming out of culinary school. You're getting these things. You've got the work ethic. You're gaining the skills, the culinary background, the awards that go along with it. Where do you go from culinary school?
As I was working at during the time I was double dutying, so I was working at Stonewood and during the culinary school at the exact same time. So I moved to Jacksonville, that's when I had graduated. And I worked there for about 6 years, and that's where I met my wife. And then we moved to Orlando, and then I got in with a lot of random companies because at that time I wanted to do more than just be a chef. In Jacksonville, the proprietor of the store, he wound up having to leave because his wife got sick during her paternity leave. And so they left me to run the restaurant for like 3 months. And I learned that I could do some different things other than just be a chef. And when he came back, I had the hunger to move into the front of the house. And so I took a job in Orlando because Stonewood still wanted me to be in the back of the house because I was very successful doing that. But my desire kind of moved past that. And that's when and it didn't work out. It didn't work out. It didn't work out well. I didn't fail, but I wasn't in my lane.
I know that one. Go on.
I wasn't in my lane.
Yeah.
And then from there, I worked at a lot of different restaurants. I decided to really, really double down on my skill set. So I found different restaurants that had different techniques and different type of cuisines. Some was wood burning grills, some was broilers, and some was steak houses, and some were luxury hotels. And I kind of bounced around doing those different things for about 4 or 5 years. And then that's what landed me back here in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Was the goal to get as much different culinary expertise or education through experience and exposure in those restaurants and businesses and around other chefs and individuals? Is that the goal there?
That was definitely the goal. That's how we built the brand of Stonewood Tavern. When we were trying to develop recipes, we had different chefs to go to different restaurants and learn different recipes and bring it back to the test kitchen. So I kind of learned that during that concept. And I was like, you know what? I'm making great money in this city. Let me just do this and let's learn as much as I can possibly learn. And it's definitely been beneficial for me because I can walk into it doesn't matter what it is. I'm a rocket.
I agree with this in so many ways because we were just talking about when I went through the dark night over the last 2.5 years, I tried to gain as many skills that I didn't have as possible. I've spent some time in seminary. I've spent some time doing some culinary training and education. I've been in the restaurants, both in fast food and in quick service. I've spent some time in some food trucks working just to get more hands-on experience. My food truck experience, though, goes way back from what we would call the Chicken Cheerio, which was a fried chicken trailer that we had as a business to demonstrate roaster fryers, actually. And that turned into a whole other thing in building food trucks and a whole other in food equipment. And, as an entrepreneur, I see an opportunity and I sometimes run through it on fire. And,
okay.
Yeah. So, but I think as entrepreneurs, we need to vertically and horizontally integrate to protect our businesses, to allow employees to have businesses. I think you have to do it very carefully and not do it too fast and
Mhm.
not try too many locations at once. I just, that's my opinion, and that comes from making the mistake of doing it the wrong way for sure and doing it the right way during times. So
Gotcha.
yeah, let's talk about diversity of the skill again. Let's talk about where it has led you and why it's important that you spent those 5 to 6 years or 4 or 5 years
Mm.
diversifying your toolkit.
Um, definitely. I, I like to seek out challenges. So those were always challenges to me. I didn't look at it like, I wouldn't say that I want to learn this so I can master it. I always looked at it as, hey, I haven't done this before. Like, I'm going to work the wood burning grill, not gas, and there's sliding wood in it. A traditional campfire wood burning grill, like the J. Alexander's, the Capitol Grill, different places like that. And I took out those challenges, and not necessarily like I want to learn it so I can put it up under my gun, my holster. I'm like, I want to master this. Like, what is the highest level in this restaurant without me being the chef? Like, I want to own the station. Like, I'm on it 40 hours a week. I'm being recognized as the dude that's rocking this station. Like, those were always my goals. Because I watched my dad as a little kid, he's a mechanic. So he was that guy in our neighborhood that was fixing people's cars. And if he didn't know how to do it, he would go get a book from the library and he would fix the truck and he would do that. And I see him do that. So I kind of picked up that it's like I felt like it was my time when I became an adult. And I always seek out those challenges to do those different things. And I got a lot of burns on my arms and different things like that by learning it. But I always seek out those challenges. And this has helped me as I go into the historically restaurants that's doing things the old way, but I grew up at the Clewiston Inn and they always did the stuff the old way. And then I worked in a place that had all the technology in the kitchen. And guess what? I just did that at Capitol Grill. So I'm comfortable doing that. And I did some steakhouses that not necessarily doing things the right way, and I've done that before too also. So I can walk into any, and I just feel comfortable doing it. Whatever the situation is, once I evaluate it, I'm like, okay, this is what it is. Let's go.
Yeah, I love this. I think it's important. And I think being part of the community, and I think all the things, the role model, if I can't figure it out, now I'm going to try my best to figure it out by educating myself. I think those are very important skills that we often don't utilize anymore as humans. To truly grow as a human, we need to grow ourselves. As a male, I think if we're not purposely growing ourselves through challenging ourselves and then solving the problem ourselves in life, throughout life, we lose purpose, we lose confidence, and we can say the world's emasculating us, but we're emasculating ourselves in some way.
Yeah, decapitating ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just want to emphasize that. I also want to emphasize something that I think is really important. Looking back at our lives and history, and reflecting on ourselves and looking at our growth to make sure that we are growing, or the times that we weren't growing, what was going on, or how it negatively impacted us, or whatever. It's important. I think a lot of humans, we sort of get through the educational process and we stop seeking education. We just seek work.
Yeah, seek work. Exactly.
And the little difference of making work truly about worship and growth and growing as a human, and then being able to grow other humans, those little nuances are a big difference. Everyone's trying to figure out, well, this guy has privilege and that guy doesn't, and all this. I agree with that in a lot of ways. There is a starting point that is an advantage point.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But after that advantage point, it's all the mindset and how we deal with it and all of that. And people go backwards too. There's a lot of people that second, third generation of wealth no longer know how to generate money on their own or even manage money, and they go way backwards. And so these are things that when we talk about mindset, or we talk about what we're just talking about now, which is diversifying your skill set. the importance of diversifying your skill set is to be able to give to people. You also get to share your testimony, help them grow because you've experienced a lot of things. Those are all important things. That's on an educational level too. It's not me just teaching it to you or telling you. I've also experienced it. So now it has collateral and clout.
Yes.
Let's talk about now moving forward. Like, you've had a journey here. What does here look like? Let's talk about that. Where are you now? What are you doing? Like, let's, take as much time on this particular point as you want, because I think it's important. And then let's talk about where you're hoping it goes from here.
Okay. Awesome. Well, where I'm at now is that I've created my own chicken wing sauce brand. So it's actually been running in the hotel that I work as a chef. Now we've been running for last 6 months, and now I've moved it to the retail spot, and that's going pretty well right now. The name of the product is 716 wing sauce. I went with that name 716 because that was the double wide trailer. I grew up in that small town, Cloiston. That was the street address. And that's where my dad put me in the kitchen and my mom put me in the kitchen. And that's where I learned how to pull those recipes. So I went with that name because it's an easy story for me to tell. It rolls smooth off the lips. It's true to my heart, and it's true to the story too also. So I went with that. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm really focusing on pushing that brand.
Oh, you love it. I'm going to ask you some questions before we talk about the future. You're in consumer packaged goods right now. So, packaging sauces, bottling them, hot fill, cold fill, all that type of stuff. I used to do co-packing in that business for a few years. So I understand the complexities, and it's different than being in a restaurant and serving sauce on a plate. Let's talk about the differences, and then I'm going to ask a follow-up question. Let's talk about the differences of doing sauce in a restaurant and now trying to get it into the same sauce into a bottle and into a store. What have you learned there? Because this is a big deal, I think.
Yeah, it is. It very is. So I'm just going to go back and forth. Tell a quick story. That when I introduced the sauce, the hotel already had a previous sauce. It was a garlic parmesan sauce. And over a year's time, the clientele was starting to ask for something different. Well, this particular sauce I've had in my back pocket for almost 10, 15 years. One of those ones like you do at a house party. Watch this. Let me show you what I'm working with. Every now and then, watch this. And everybody's like, oh, they love it. So one particular night, so they wanted something different. And I'm like, it was slow. I'm like, watch this. So I whip it up real quick and I serve it. And then the guy tastes it and he's like, I want another order to go. So I make it again. Then somebody else at the bar want it and make it again. Boom, right? So then I go on 2 weeks vacation to Key West and I come back and the general manager of the hotel was like, I have these clients, they want the red sauce they had a couple weeks ago. So he's talking to me in my face. I'm like, what red sauce? He's like, I don't know. They say the red sauce that's kind of sweet and hot. So I'm like, he's talking to me, like not knowing that I made it. So I make it and I do it again. So the guys asked me to come out to the table. He's like, they really want to talk to the chef that made it. So I go out to the table. Lo and behold, they were buyers for Walmart. Dude. And the guy looked at me right in my face. He's like, you need to bottle this up. I'm like, what? I'm like, oh, I don't even know what he's talking about. He's like, no, you need to bottle this up. I can't say that we're going to buy it because I think you have something that's totally different, that is tasteful. You should think about it. So I went home and I got in the lab and I went to work and I found a co-packer. And then I signed a non-disclosure agreement to talk about the recipe openly. And then we went back and forth, took almost 3 months, back and forth. And that's one thing I did learn about the restaurant. The restaurant business, everything is like right now. You got 15 minutes right now. And this is a marathon, not a sprint. It took almost 8 months to get this thing to retail ready.
And you're driving the process. I mean, you're having to produce the information, the recipe, give them what they need, design a label, design a logo. Talk to me about designing the logo, the label. Let's go into all the nutritionals, the certification. Yeah.
I tell you what I did is it's crazy, right? So I'm go back to football, right? And so I looked at the Miami Hurricanes. I watched that movie so many times, but the guy said he looked at I-4 in Florida. It goes from Daytona Beach to Tampa to Orlando. I said I was going to look for a company that was local in Florida that I can drive to, and I can touch them physically in my area. And what I did is I called everybody below the I-4 interstate that I can find. And I just talked to him and I told him my vision. I told him what I want to do. My co-packer, he's like, guess what? I have a lot of your ingredients on hand now. So don't send me no money. Let's get to working on it. So I was like, I need to find somebody with artwork. So he gave me a label company and I talked to her. And then she asked me about my graphic art. And I told her that I'm cash flowing this. Like I don't have a credit card for business. If I have to work another job to get it done, I'm going to get it done. I have to move at the speed of cash. And I had to really put that in my heart to say, I'm not moving at nobody else's pace. I need to move at my pace. And then she got me a graphic artist that agreed to work at my speed of cash. Because, it's really funny. Like you talk to these people, these merchants, and they'll tell you like, well, the graphic art is going to be $1,600. But you really have a conversation with them and I'm not trying to preach, please don't. And you pray about it. And the Bible says you have not because you ask not. And I told her what I was doing and how I wanted to do it. And she broke it all the way down. She said, I'll do the art for $300. And they did it for $300. And they sent me back different copies. She asked me how I wanted. I told her I wanted to be hip. I wanted to look funky. I wanted to stand out on the shelves. I wanted to use the McDonald's colors. I know it attracts food. Buyers, that look. I said I wanted that. I wanted the Subway Surfer type of graphic art on it. I had my daughter to draw it up, send it to her, and she worked with it, and they produced it. And that person sent it to the label company. The label company told me I have to send a $5,000 order. I said I can't afford a $5,000 order. I can do 300. So they printed me 300 labels. But then the co-packer wanted me to do 10,000 bottles. I said, I can't do it, but this is my plan. This is what I'm going to do. And everybody got in line and we produced the product. And now it's going local inside 3 grocery stores here in Palm Beach County.
I mean, the shift in the restaurant to this is now you're also a salesperson. You're trying to sell your product, not just a restaurant or a concept. You're selling one specific item that is usually a fraction of a menu in a restaurant. So you're learning new skills there, which I'm going to talk about this actually. This is a good topic. Gaining the capacity for growth, education, experience, exposure in those 3 areas is hugely important. How do I gain the capacity? I constantly read. I constantly listen to podcasts. I constantly listen to book on tapes, whatever it is. I constantly go get experience in different fields. I constantly seek a diverse amount of information. I constantly am so intelligent that I research things that honestly change my own opinion.
Yes.
Okay. That is important. If you're not changing your own opinion or something, every once in a while you're not doing enough reading outside of your comfort level to grow. So that's there. And so that's what I want to emphasize. There's a capacity like a muscle. The bigger my muscle gets, the bigger it has the capacity to handle more reps and more weight. It's the same with with having the capacity of growth or the capacity to handle a new growth or handle something new or diversifying my business or diversifying my skill set, whatever it is. So you're now a salesperson. You're now building a business, establishing a business, all of this. Talk to me a little bit about that because it's different than being an executive chef, right? You're now changing you're adding a whole different, what I would call vertical to your tool set.
A whole different. And you know what? I had to find, and I'm just throwing it out there. I don't want to offend anybody, but you have to find people that you're equally yoked with. And that's not easy. And that's not easy. But you know it if you kind of like, if you know what to look for. right? I'm just going to bounce back and forth a little bit. The Bible says God told Samuel what the next king was going to look like. But when he walked through the city, everybody tried to show Samuel, this is the king. But Samuel's like, no, that's not what God showed me, right? So when I looked out for marketing, I went to a radio station and I spoke with a guy and he told me it's going to be like $3,000 for a radio ad. And then I called another radio station. The guy was leaving the station. He just picked up the phone. I thought I was going to get the receptionist, but it was actually the guy. And he agreed to work with me to help me build the product and build the brand. He created a commercial in my budget because they had a budget. And I told him what my budget was because I told him, this is what I'm working with the second job. I have to do this with cash. And he listened and he put the package together and we just started going. And he produced a commercial. And now it's a commercial now here in the Palm Beach County and Miami and the Port St. Lucie area. So it's like you have to find the people that you got to be equally yoked with. It can't be just anybody that you find online. It can't be anybody. You got to really, really see if you have those core values. And you got to be the one to walk away from it if it's not. It's okay that we don't get along. It's okay that we're not equally yoked. You know, you're running your race, I'm running my race. And like I said, I bought into it 100%. My race is different than your race. And I can't win your race, and you can't win my race. And that's what the lane I'm in. I'm trying to double down in my lane. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I actually told the guy that helped me with my payroll, he says, well, we're going to run your credit. I said, my man, we're going to run my business credit. And if I can't get it with my business credit, it ain't for me right now. He's like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, well, you're definitely not the company I'm working with. And then I found another company that says, you know what? I think that's a splendid idea because your business has to have a life of its own. When he said that, I knew I was talking to the right guy.
Well, and I love this too, because the way businesses are set up in the United States is actually like a non-organic being. They are beings. They are meant to function separate of the human. That's why I think it's so funny that the whole personal guarantee thing we do in loans in America or around the world, like it's a stupid thing. We're crossing over a line that we should never be crossing over. And if it needs a personal guarantee, maybe it's not the right loan. I guess maybe that's one. Or number two, if it's a company that's asking you for one, they don't see the vision and the dream or believe or have the relationship with you to understand you enough to see where it's going. So that's the other part. Like you just need to, the relationships you build, the right individuals, they're important.
Yeah, they're to me, it's so important. And I've been marginally successful so far. I have a lot of great things moving outside of the restaurant. Some things that's pulling me outside of the restaurant. Like it's a lot of great energy going on with the product too. Also, I have 4 different other sauce versions behind that. So things are working really well. I'm really proud of it.
Let's talk about that a little bit as we wrap up. Let's talk about what the main sauce is. Again, the name and sort of how you developed it. Let's talk about the other 4 that you are in the works and sort of how you're sort of stacking the brand and strategically how you're looking at the future.
Yeah, definitely. So the main sauce or the beginning sauce is a fan favorite. It's the one I have the commercial on. It's the one that's on the Instagram, the Facebook. There's one I have on the website, chefjowan.com. The name of the sauce is 716 wing sauce. And it is a hot sauce, but I didn't particularly put hot sauce on it because the lane I wanted to be in was specifically the chicken wing sauce as far as retail. Because there's a million different hot sauces. There's a lot of different hot sauces. Everybody has a hot sauce in their mama. But a wing sauce is slim, few, not that many, but it is a market for it. And I kind of went with that one. That has a essence of honey, the cayenne pepper sauce, and Cajun Louisiana spices, parsley, herbs, and different things like that in it. So it's not as spicy, but it's sweet. It's more of a honey hot type of product. And then behind that, I went with the same number, because that's the brand. 716 Gold is a barbecue sauce. It will have roasted shallots, garlic. It's a mustard-based sauce. I went with that because the tomato sauce is all over the place.
It's good. I can have it. It's not ketchup-based.
Yeah. I went with that one because it looks good. and with the same logo and different things like that. And then I have the 716 Smoking Joe because my first name is Johwan. So I went with that one. That one has the cayenne pepper and Scotch bonnet and chipotle peppers in it.
So it's
And
got a
that's
little
something.
Jamaican taste to it a little bit. Most Jamaican.
Yeah, yeah. I did that one to so I can get in with the big boys that has their own little personal hot sauce. You know, the little hot sauce like this is ghost pepper and this is Asian scorpion pepper. Like it is a market for that. So I kind of developed that one for that spot too. Also, and then I have a steak sauce too. Also, with 716 steak sauce. I kept it really plain, really simple, and that has roasted garlic, roasted shallots, truffle oil, and of course it's the ketchup and the Worcestershire base to it. And how I looked at the whole brand, I looked at somebody's home and they opened up the cabinet and I would touch every single spot category that somebody at the home would cook.
I like this. Let's go through them one more time just for the audience because I think it's important because you purposely layer them. You purposely allow each one to have its own category. It's not just layering buffalo sauce after buffalo sauce or different buffalo sauces or whatever, because I see a lot of people, once they get in the sauces, they tend to stick to a streamline of just barbecue or a streamline of just blah, blah, blah. And so they're while you don't want to be too broad, you don't want to be too specific as you grow it. Also, you want a family to be able to buy 2 or 3 of your sauces and each person have something that they like. That's the key. Definitely. Anyway, so go run through them one more time for me, please.
Okay, so the first one be the 716 wing sauce, and it's the 716 gold. That's the mustard-based barbecue sauce. Then behind that is the 716 steak sauce. We have that. That's the roasted shallots, the garlic, the truffle oil, and then it's the Smoking Joe. It's the super hot one. So that's the collection that I have. And I really got that when I first pitched it to Costco. The guy was like, you should rate a package so we can get the whole package in at Costco. And we could just do a bundle. And that's where that brain started. That's when that started rolling there. And we went inside the lab and we created those recipes and we're ready to go on those products once I take this one to a bigger level.
Love it. And I think it's the right strategy. One of the key points I want to let everyone hear is that build a business off of cash flow, even if you're working a second job. Okay.
It's hard.
It's hard. But the problem with getting debt or trying to do things and leveraging it never ever works out well. And at some point it does cost you something or you get too used to it. So it is the better way of building a business. Any business that I've seen that's built well, that's still alive, it built their model this way. It's an important model.
And can I add a side story to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
For your fans? A company has solicited their services to me about by distributing my brand. And they really wanted me to do a retainer fee of a certain amount of money a month. And they wanted a certain percentage off the sale. And I think that's a standard. But I think for me, that was kind of high, what they was offering. And what I did is like, when you're doing it by cash, it's easy to say no. And you don't have to take bad deals. And I started with a smaller inventory that I can control. And their whole leverage was, I know he's leveraged himself with debt. We're going to get him with this. They're like, submit your credit card and we can get the ball rolling. We can sell the stuff. I said, my man, I don't have no credit card with this business. He's like, well, you need one for the business. So you should go on this slide and apply for this credit card. I'm like, no. And I didn't do it because I own it. I can move as fast as I want to. I can move as slow as I want to because I don't owe anybody on it. I have full control of it.
And one of the things everyone sees, like these food companies being sold for millions of dollars, a lot of them are so indebted that the entrepreneur walks away with very little at the end of the day. But what the entrepreneur is actually doing is just trying to escape from the debt.
Yeah.
And
That
it's
is,
not talked about because the amount of money is so glorious. But the reality is there's an offset there that usually isn't very much, which is why the entrepreneur keeps being an entrepreneur. One, the chase and whatever, but usually at the end of the day, they realize between the taxes, between the debt in the business, between everything they have to do after they sold the business, they have no choice but to go back and be an entrepreneur. If they really want to get to those dreams and goals that they had, it ends up
Mhm.
getting cut a little short. And then even that
Yeah.
money creates a whole other other pot of issues. I can't think of the word right now. Slew of issues,
Yeah.
I think is the word. But
Well,
and that being said, if you're not handling it properly when you're building the business, when you don't have it, and
yeah.
you're trying to leverage yourself too much, when you do have it, you're going to leverage what you do have, and that's even worse of leveraging what you don't have. I'm
And,
just going
and,
to
and
say that to everyone.
yeah. And I know, I know with my business, it will come a time that I have to leverage credit. It will come a time to fill these big orders. I have big orders coming. I see it down the road. But like today isn't not today. It's not today. It's like when I get the boat close enough to the dock for me to jump, then it's time for that point.
Absolutely. Who were the individuals in your life that were your greatest mentors, motivators, coaches? Talk to me briefly about that real quick.
Okay. One is my dad, the work ethic. That's where I got that from. A lot of preachers. I don't know if you want me to mention their names or nothing like that.
Yeah, you can
But
mention their names. Absolutely.
okay, TD Jakes, I listened to him in my earlier life. He made the Bible plain to me so I can understand it. And I pull strength from that. I listen to Eric Thomas, the hip hop preacher. He's like all over social media. I've been listening to him since 2012. His story
I love
grabs
him.
me.
Probably the same for me. I think it was like 2013, 2014. Love
I
what he
listen to
does. Yeah.
I listen to it every day. Les Brown. I've bounced back from Joel Osteen, so I kind of stick with the Christian type of genre a little bit because that's where I grew up as. My mom and dad was pastors, so I grew up listening to that, and I kind of it resonated with me very well.
Love this. Talk to me about how your core values, your faith, your discipline is translating into this brand, and how you can feel that the culture of this brand is going to reflect that. Because I think it is true. It's a reflection of you. It's a reflection of sound business decisions. And it's also actually, you're an example of sound biblical financial decisions building a business. And so just talk to me about how you feel that this is building your brand. Also, the culture. You're young, but I can already feel it. It's one of the reasons I asked you to be on the show and reached out to you, is because it's not only the brand. I knew the energy. I knew that God's working in your life. And there is a testimony to be told about the miracles we talked about, the $10,100, the person liking the sauce to change your trajectory into being an entrepreneur also in the sauce game. And I think that that's important. So let's talk about culture, core values, ethics, stuff like that are starting to be built into your business, and sort of the morals and ethics that lead you around what we just talked about. Does that
Definitely,
make
I think
sense?
so. Yeah, yeah, it definitely makes sense. I think that the more like, and I just spoke to my dad before I got on your podcast, and he always tell me to pray. It's like literally, like my dad is 69 years old, and not one conversation he's never said to pray. He's like, son, if you pray, you always get answers. And he always told me to keep working, keep working, keep working. He also told me to do right by people. I said, you do right by people, no matter if they do wrong by you. He said, God gets the glory. He said, the Bible says, vengeance is not mine, says the Lord. Right? So it's not upon us, because we're supposed to work our craft unto the Lord, right? So that means that that means we're supposed to do our best in whatever we do. And that's how God's going to bless. He said, when Adam committed the sin, right? He said, go and possess the land. So we have to go, and that's where God's going to bless. And I believe that keeping a biblical foundation, learning to serve people and offer a great product, and stick to the brand. I've been known to produce, as far as cooking, like great tasting food, full flavorful dishes. And I decided to go with that with my sauces too, also because that's who I am. That's what I've been recognized in each concept I worked in. So I was like, I'm gonna bust my butt. We're gonna work hard. We're gonna try to make sure we give to the community. Cause I used to coach youth football for like 6 years. And I'm like, and I see these kids, like I see little boys out there playing football and dad doesn't show up not one time during the season. Dad's not around. Mom's trying, and these organizations trying to like do fundraisers. So I'm like, I want to be a blessing to them. I want to find a community that needs some help and serve and use the money to serve people. And I believe that God's going to bless and God's going to bless me and it's just going to trickle down. So I like, let's create a project. And that's what my biggest search went to. I was like, I need to create something that I can use to be a blessing to other people and to myself that I don't necessarily have to make with my hands. Because I'm going to get old one day.
I know. I'm going to connect this to something, and it's a more popular known thing now, but about 4 or 5 years ago, not as popular. Adam Sandler gets paid a lot of money by Netflix. His films still make a lot of money. 20 to $25 million is his minimum for a movie, minimum, somewhere in there, depending on what number of movie it is that year, because he can produce up to 4 movies a year. Think about that. Not only are you good, but Saturday Night Live trained you to do skits and stuff and be on the fly acting wise, where your output is more than anyone else's. I just want everyone to understand that your writing, your output, it's every week. You're doing small things. Those small things lead to big things. And in regards to that, the dude is worth $800 million, but has given hundreds of millions of dollars away in art education, whether it's music, culinary, theater, whatever, all types of arts. Okay. That's one. 2 is he has a nonprofit that does so many other things that I can't even imagine. He lives in probably the smallest house of any actor in Hollywood. In Los Angeles. He lives very humbly, and all of it is so the thing is his belief is what he has gained is to give back. It's not necessarily for him to hold, it's for him to do good with. Okay?
Exactly.
And so I think that's very important. I think that, yes, you can have a nice house and you can have nice cars and all those things, but at some point, you have to realize that God is blessing you with abundance in order for you to help others abundantly.
Yes, abundantly.
And if you can't make that connection, there is no abundance for you. And those that get there without God in other ways, the piper comes and pays. He demands his payment. And we see it right now, what's going on in the music business with some of those top artists. They cheated. They used shortcuts. They did not do things in a way. They became very wealthy, but it's caught up with them. Soros and all these other, that's not the right name, all the guys, the island, all the stuff down there, like all that stuff eventually catches up for people. Epstein, whatever. All these things we do in life eventually catches up with us, small or big. You know, how many things I've answered for over the last 3 years that I've had to come to a reckoning on? It's no joke. After 24 years of business, things I didn't learn, ways I misbehaved, bad decisions I made, just anything that hurt the individuals in our business, which we do as entrepreneurs unintentionally, but we do hurt people. And sometimes we have to make the choice in human resources to hurt someone and fire them, hoping that it's a lesson that they may change their behavior. Okay, letting someone go and doing it gently, and wrong answer. You're not serving the person, you're not serving your business, and you're not serving society. So while you think that you're avoiding a lawsuit, what you're doing is you're ensuring civilization's downfall.
Yeah.
Because if we're not teaching at every lesson possible, then we're not doing it. So that's the other thing that I want to say. And I got on a tangent. I'm sorry, but I do.
I agree with you.
I want to emphasize those things. I also want to emphasize one of the things we talked about, anyone who's listening in, is every person in your business is important. If a fry chef feels like they're the lowest person at the fryer, but it's because they have to learn their way up the chain, it's because they're not understanding that the lowest part of the chain is still part of the chain, and without the lowest part, it can't be connected.
Can't be connected.
And so I hear all this all the time. I'm just this and I'm just that. And, I have these levels. Well, one, as an entrepreneur, if you're not figuring out a way to bring equalization to your team, as well as a hierarchy, the hierarchy is, I get it. People understand it as power and leading, but the reality is it should be an achievement-based thing. Yes. And it also should be a leader-based thing. And it also should understand that if I'm in this position and I want to grow out of this position, I've got to do two things.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, let's call it three things. We've got to do three things. I've got to grow the business. No matter what position I'm in, I've got to do the best I can, no matter where I am in the company. I've got to grow myself, not only spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, but in the place that I want to go.
Yes.
In the business. And then lastly, you have to grow at least 2 to 3 individuals that are below you or around you if you don't have anyone below you in the quote unquote hierarchy. I mean below as in structure, not as in human value. Train 2 to 3 people on your job or get them to spend time with it. Incentivize them to want to take your position, because the other reason with growth is usually there's no one to take our places, so we can't grow out of them. It's not that we're not worthy of the growth. It's just that no one's there to do it. And why we're not worthy of the growth potentially is because we don't know how to invest in growing others so they can be us.
Yeah.
In their own way.
Yeah, I learned that in 2005, working at Stonewood. I wanted to take over to be a chef at one of the restaurants. And the guy was like, "You want to be the chef?" I'm like, "Yeah, I want to be the chef." He's like, "Train somebody to replace you. Then I'll make you the chef." I'm the best saute cook in the company. I said, "Oh, yeah, we know you are. Train somebody else to be the best saute cook in the company." And I was just like, "What?" And when I did that, and I achieved that goal, I've done it in every place I've worked at. Once I've learned the station, I see somebody on the fry, I say, "Come on the grill. Let me show you this. Let me show you this. Let me show you this. You see how to do this." And then those people are still working the grill. They're making more money. They're loving what they do. Not 100%, but, a lot of people. But I agree with that, though. You have to do it like that.
Well, and I think it's just so important to aim bigger. Also, while we're doing it, if you're going to grow someone, try to grow them so large they do better than you at your job. Look at the humility there and what it teaches you about your own job and about your personality when you try to grow someone so big that they outgrow you, with that potential that you want to make the position better than when you were there. Mm-hmm. That takes it to a whole new level, and watch what happens in your life and how fast you move in a corporation, or if you're not in an entrepreneurial organization, watch how fast the organization grows and you along with it.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add before we get off? I want to make sure you talk about where they can find you online and what stores they can find you in, or if they can order you online. I want to talk about all of that, but also give you the mic to sort of talk about anything that maybe we didn't cover that you want to mention before we get off.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Like I mentioned before, the product is 716 weak sauce. It goes up under it's on my website at chefjohwan.com. That's ChefJohwan.com. Right now, it's currently listed on eBay, Shopify, Etsy, and the first of the month, February 1st, it'll be on Amazon, listed up under the Amazon Prime. It'll be there. And also have it in local grocery stores here in the West Palm Beach County. And you can find me on Instagram at 716 wing sauce. That's my Instagram.
Perfect. That's how I found you on your Instagram. I recommend everyone go there. Start supporting. That's how you can support this guy. Order the sauces. If you're in Florida, get to a store right away, pick some of this up. I do know it's going to be big. I do know that as he adds other ones in with his ability, his culinary skills, what I can see they're starting to do on social media, I can also see the eyes starting to trend towards it. This is a brand and a product worth paying attention to, and an entrepreneur worth paying attention to, guys. He has decades worth of experience that God has given him. God then gave him another challenge to get out of his comfort zone, to grow into who he needed to be so he could have the most amount of impact in the world. The most amount of impact in the world, without a doubt, no matter what, who touches more humans than any other business is the entrepreneur in the food and beverage business.
Yes.
We have more impact and influence than anyone else ever will. Not a church. I don't care if you're talking about the Catholic Church or the Pope. As a group, we employ, support, do whatever. More communities, more humans have more responsibility for trajectory and legacy than any other group. So pay attention to this guy because he's doing it the right way. He has the background. He's spiritually armed. Then he goes through humility that gives him the ability to understand humans and the hurt and pain that comes along with being human, that comes with humility. Okay. Then he goes through culinary school, another opportunity, gains a leadership skills. Continues through his life, decides he needs to gain as much credibility, skill, and as diverse as possible skill set. He chases that. That's called the Renaissance man. Okay. We talked about it 2 podcasts ago. This is an important attribute of a successful human. I know everyone says do one thing well and then worry about the rest. You do one thing well at the beginning. Then you can start building the capacity to do many things and be a Renaissance man. This Renaissance man then gains the capacity to do things outside his comfort zone, which his whole life has been preparing for, but now he's honed it in. Now he can become an entrepreneur. Now God can truly use him. He had to be willing, right? But it takes a lifetime, and it's no joke when we see the memes or the things on social media. It took 70 years for Job, and Moses 40 years in the desert, and blah, 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 or the Israelites 40 years in the desert. It's Moses however many years before his wife and freeing the slave. All these things happen. But no matter what story you look at or each book of the Bible, it is a long lesson learned. And even when David killed Goliath, he still got tempted by sin and lust and immoral behaviors and affair, murderous temptations. We're not perfect, but what we can do is understand in all scenarios, good or bad, that we are being armed for something better if we continue with steadfastness to move forward. That's what's the great thing about this story we just heard. If you're struggling, it's the beginning. Have faith in your journey. Have faith in the good and the bad, and things don't work out because not everything can be good. We don't learn only from good things. So thank you, everyone, for listening in. I love you guys. I appreciate all of you. We're starting to get in a rhythm here. I'm starting to get comfortable again, recording and behind the mic. I'm starting to be able to get back in the swing of things, of having conversations and getting the information that is valuable out of the guests. So I appreciate the guests for being so willing to share, and the authenticity and the vulnerability in doing so. So I'm going to ask Johwan to be back on the show. I'm going to ask you to sign up again because I think we have a lot more things to talk about: morals, ethics, spirituality, business. So I'm going to ask you to sign up for a part 2. I'll send you the link again if you don't have it. Anyone in the audience, if you are a food and beverage entrepreneur, hospitality entrepreneur, nutrition entrepreneur, farming entrepreneur or farmer, fisherman, fishing entrepreneur, all those things that fit into sort of this category around food, any support service to the food industry, please reach out, click on the link, sign up to be on the show. I'd love to have you on there. And we're trying to give as much education and valuable information to the world as possible. We can do that now. We've grown it here, and God can work on a very large level now, and as well as goodness and growth and exporting knowledge to people who need it everywhere around the world who are suffering. That a little bit of knowledge can go a long way in changing the legacy of their family. So this is important. It goes farther than a donation of your dollars. And that's hard for people to fathom because money buys so much, but it doesn't buy as much as empowering the individual to earn their own living and then teach their family it. And then their family teaches the next generation it, and it compounds, period. And if we don't logically see that, I'm sorry, we're not seeing life in the way that the world works. Money buys things, but the ability to earn it builds legacies and freedom. So I love you guys. Thank you everyone for listening in, sharing, liking, subscribing. I love you guys. We're out.